I can fix all. Once we record it, I can fix it, give all this extra stuff at the beginning. All right,
UML. Sorry, go ahead.
So we're ready.
All right. UML Communication Diagram by Keilbart and Jason Presher. UML Communication. So a UML communication diagram is similar to what was known as a collaboration diagram in previous versions of UML. They do the same thing. A communication diagram is shown pretty much the same way as sequence diagrams, but with the option of placing boxes anywhere. So there's really no rules as to how boxes are placed or where boxes are placed. You can put them anywhere your media presentation allows. Communication diagrams show the flow of messages between objects and imply basic associations between classes. So with objects shown, they have association connectors, and those connectors have messages attached to them indicating direction of message flow. Another part of that association connector is a numbering system indicating what's happening in the order of events. So as we see, UML communication diagrams are a visual representation of events. They're based on showing object relationships, and they are part of behavioral modeling within UML. So they define the varieties of interaction as a model executes itself.
All right, so we have a UML communication demonstration. The demonstration is based on the Pantry Pro program that we are designing for the course. And so this is the example. At the top left corner, we have the interaction with the Pantry Pro. We have a user. The diagram shows the sequence of events that the user would do to find a recipe. So number one is the user finds a recipe through the Pantry Pro. So the Pantry Pro does a search up into the recipes, which is 1.1, and does a search function, goes into the recipe and pulls up all the recipes. And the user looks through those recipes, and when they find one they're interested in, 1.2, view the recipe function. It opens the recipe, they look at the recipe. If they like that recipe and they decided they want to save it, and they go down to 1.3, and it adds that recipe to their recipe table or recipe database or the recipe file that they want to use so they can view the recipe later. Now, there's some positives associated with communication diagrams. Communication diagrams are much more space efficient. That's because the boxes can be placed anywhere on the page. The top, bottom, left, right, horizontally, vertically. It doesn't really matter where they go. And modifying the sketches is much easier. Let's say you've created the diagram and the box is in the wrong place. Or you can erase it or delete it, redraw it somewhere else, either next to where that box was or out somewhere else. In contrast with sequence diagrams, everything must be on the right edge. And because of that, it uses up all the space really fast. And then developers can see how fast it eats up that space real quick. And in UML communication diagrams, it's better to illustrate the complex branching, iteration, and the concurrent behavior associated with the UML diagram.
So the downside of communication diagrams is that they can be hard to follow at first glance. Due to the nature of the boxes not having to be placed in any specific order, you really have to focus, and this is imperative, on reading the sequential numbers that are attached to the messages and what's being communicated. Otherwise, the system will make no sense. The diagram that's on this slide is a perfect example of that. If you don't follow the numbers, starting with 1 to 1.1 to 1.2 and so on, then it's just chaos. And that's not what we're trying to show with UML diagrams. So with communication diagrams specifically, they are hard to follow at first glance. Another thing that's kind of a downside is that there's no specific naming system for communication diagrams. And so because of that, they just use the generic names. So for long-term naming of communication diagrams, we use the word interaction, as is shown in this diagram on the slide. It says interaction online bookshop. And if we were to have the short-term name instead, we would simply use the letters SD, and then it would say online bookshop, and the diagram would look a little bit different than it's currently shown here. But those are kind of the downsides. So again, hard at first glance, no specific names. So some recommendations we have are, this is great to use when you're short of space to display what you want to show everyone. So if you've only got X amount of space available and your sequence diagram is going to use Y amount of space, which happens to be a lot longer, then you'd want to use a communication diagram because you can reorder everything to show perfectly what you're trying to show.
And another recommendation is if our notations on the diagrams need to be more complex, more description or whatever is needed, we should avoid using UML communication diagrams. Maybe use sequence or something with more better notations. And so that's our presentation on UML communication diagrams. I hope you enjoyed it. And
I had muted my microphone earlier so that my kids wouldn't be making a ton of noise while you were talking. And then when it switched to downsides, I started to talk. But obviously there was nothing going on because I was muted.